Hi, I'm Jack with Multnomah County Weatherization. Our weatherization program is helping people of Multnomah County who qualify income-wise to improve energy efficiency of their houses. Oftentimes, we end up investing thousands of dollars worth of improvement work. And the amazing part is that everything we do is at no cost to our clients. All they need to do is to qualify income-wise and go through the application process. The hardest part of that is usually gathering all the needed documents. Once people complete the application process, the next step is for one of our energy auditors to schedule a home energy assessment. It's a visit that lasts a few hours, where we inspect the house, the attic, crawl space, basement, mechanical equipment, and come up with a list of things that would improve the energy efficiency of the house. I'm one of the 5 energy auditors, and in this presentation, I want to share my experience and the perspective that might help you get your house more energy efficient. However, what we're discovering and learning in our industry is that energy efficiency might not even be the biggest benefit of our work. There is a growing evidence pointing to the fact that while saving $50 a month on energy bills is great, what people get much more excited about is being more comfortable in their houses and improving health outcomes. And those are the benefits that our work has. In this presentation, I want to give you an idea of what actually makes a house energy efficient, comfortable, and healthy. Let's start with energy efficiency. It's a good place to begin. Imagine a cardboard box. Let's say it's sitting in some cold place and we want to put eggs in it and keep them at a constant warm temperature so they would hatch. What do we need to do to achieve that with the least amount of energy spent? To answer that, we need to understand how the box is losing heat. And there are 2 main pathways. First one is through all the air that is moving through the box, since it's not airtight. As we warm the air inside, it becomes more buoyant. It floats up and finds its way out through all kinds of gaps and cracks and microscopic pathways. However much air goes out, same amount of cold air comes in from outside to replace it. The box will be sucking the air from the bottom, since that's where the area of low pressure is now created. We can almost fully eliminate the heat loss by making the box airtight. Second pathway is heat that is moving through the box itself in all directions. We can't get rid of this loss completely, but we can significantly reduce it by insulating the box. And we need to insulate it all around, not just the top, all around. Once we do those 2 actions, our box becomes really good at keeping the heat in. Now there is just one more thing left to do, and that is to provide a source of efficient heat. That's it. Just 3 things. Now, why am I talking about cardboard boxes at all? The funny thing is, this box is essentially a miniature version of your house. All the same principles apply and same exact solutions work. To make any house energy efficient, only 3 actions need to be taken. Make it airtight, insulate all around, and provide efficient heat. Of course, there are some details and nuances about how we go about doing it. Let's look into what it takes to make a house airtight and insulated all around. We'll start at the top and we'll go down. Let's start with attics. Whenever we hear about insulation, most commonly it refers to insulation of the attic. You go to a big box store and you'll see some ads. Do you need more insulation in your attic? Let us help insulate your attic. Why do you think there is so much focus on insulating attics? Most common guesses is heat rises. In reality, the answer is because it's easy. Yes, insulating attics is the easiest of any other areas. It's usually easily accessible and gravity works with you. Whatever you put in there will stay in place for decades. Don't get me wrong, insulating attics is definitely very important, but insulating walls or floors is not any less important. It's just harder to do. And so, attics. Whenever we want to insulate an attic, there is a lot that we want to do in there before we actually insulate. Namely, we want to air seal. Seal and insulate the ducts in there. Vent everything out if there is bath fans or dryers or kitchen exhaust fan. Add special air channels for eave vents. Maybe replace bath fans. Make sure that all the electrical is in good shape. Insulate any skylight walls, and so on. There might be more stuff to be done. If you ever hire a company to insulate your attic and they don't mention doing any of those things, that's a red flag. Doing those things once the attic is insulated is really hard. Let's just look at the air sealing. What does it entail in the attic? What we want to do is to seal any air pathways between the house and the attic so the air can't get up there. Usually there are gaps on top of every wall. Here's a picture of what the top of the wall looks like. On both sides of it, there is usually a gap about 1/8 of an inch. We want to seal it with foam or caulking. Same around any electrical, plumbing, or ducting penetrations. If there is a chimney, there's usually a huge opening. We want to seal that. Sometimes walls don't even have a top plate, and you can just look inside of them from the attic. All of that needs to be sealed. Recessed lights are also usually quite leaky. Same with skylights. There might be quite a bit more opportunities to air seal there. I don't have the time to cover it all, but it's quite important to have it all done by people who have experience. Once we air sealed and did all other things in there, it's time to insulate. How much insulation do we want to see in there? What do you think? Is this a good amount? Most people usually guess about 6 inches of insulation or so. The thinking goes, if I had a 6-inch thick blanket, I'd be really warm. The code for our area is R49. R rating is the measure of insulation. The higher the number, the more insulation there is. So R49 means that we want to see about 17 to 18 inches of insulation. And that's what we do. We blow in this much insulation on top of whatever is in there. That way it fills any gaps and cracks with an even blanket that keeps the heat in. That way it fills any gaps and cracks with an even blanket that keeps the heat in. Some people wonder what's the difference between using the fiberglass bat or blowing in insulation. The answer is both can work quite well, but it's really hard to achieve the same result using bats. It's kind of like, imagine you have a choice of covering yourself as you go to sleep with 1 blanket or 15 scarves. For the bats to work well, they have to be meticulously installed, and it's rarely done. Many people are curious about attic ventilation. Attic ventilation became almost a religion for people, and many think that the more, the better. In reality, the problems that attic ventilation is usually there to fix should be fixed with air sealing and insulation. If your attic is properly air sealed and insulated, it won't have any issue with moisture because the moisture in there comes from the air that comes from the house and then condenses. If you have issues with icicles or ice dams, as they are properly called, the root of the issue is again the same. They only happen because the excessive amount of heat that escapes to the attic and then melts the snow on the roof. Solution is air sealing and insulation. You should not be wasting your energy on running fans in there. Okay, we insulated the attic. Let's move on to the walls. Walls are often an even bigger surface area in the house than an attic. And around here, most older houses don't have any insulation in the walls at all. That makes them probably the most important area to insulate. Insulating walls makes a huge difference in how the house feels and for energy efficiency. How is it done? Inside a wall, every 16 inches or so are wood studs. Between each 2 studs is an empty cavity. Our goal is to fill it with insulation. To do that, we take a strip of siding off and around the whole perimeter, and then drill holes in the plywood that's under the siding. We stick a hose in there and fill it up using densely packed cellulose, using a special blowing machine. Once the cavity is full, we plug and seal the hole in the plywood and put the siding back on. It can also be done from the inside. It's just a little more disruptive for the people in the house. We also use infrared cameras to be able to see if the walls are insulated and see how well they are insulated. The reason we densely pack cellulose into the walls is because it achieves really good insulation levels, but it also pretty much stops any air movement in there. We get two effects for the price of one. Next, we move to insulating floors. If you have a crawl space, insulating the floor is what we would commonly do. And just like with the attics, we want to do a lot of work to prepare the crawl space before we insulate the floor. We want to air seal and insulate the ducts in there, insulate water pipes, put plastic on the ground, and make sure that all the vents have good mesh that does not let the rodents in. I'm talking about the vents between the crawl space and the outside. Only then do we insulate. When it comes to air sealing crawl spaces, there would usually be a huge hole under the bathtub. Heating vents, also any plumbing and electrical holes. I mentioned putting plastic on the ground. Many people are not aware of the importance of that. If you see exposed earth in your crawl space, it's really not good. And that's because earth is emitting some things that we don't want in our air, namely radon and moisture. And as we remember, our houses are sucking air from the bottom. So about half of all the air that we breathe in a house with a crawl space comes from the crawl space. And it's usually the least healthy air around. We want to make it more healthy and separate the house from that air as much as possible. And that's what we do. The plastic on the ground does not have to be meticulously installed. As long as it covers the ground, it's probably working. It doesn't have to be taped at the seams either. Now, if you have a basement, it's most likely part of the conditioned space and there is no need to insulate the floor or do anything else. The only thing we want to do in basements is to seal and insulate one area where a lot of air is coming in and a lot of heat is going out. It's called rim joist. It's a piece of wood above the foundation wall that goes all the way around the house, and it's just 1.5 inches of wood separating your house from the outside. If your basement is finished though, we probably can't do much about it. Once the crawl space is prepared, we can do the actual insulation. The way it's done is we use fiberglass bats that we put into the cavities and support with nylon twine that we zigzag and staple to the joist. It might not be intuitive, but supporting the floor insulation is the most important aspect of doing it right. Here's an example of just a 10-year-old house. As you can see, gravity over time is a powerful force. We don't want to give it any chances. Second most important aspect of floor insulation is choosing bats that are thick enough that they will have good contact with the floor. If there is a gap between insulation and the floor, the insulation is not doing much. It's okay to compress the insulation. And then we certainly want to make sure we don't leave any voids. And here is what a finished crawl space might look like. If you look in your crawl space and see plastic on the ground, insulated floors, well sealed and insulated ducts, you might be in good shape. Okay, those are the steps that it takes to make a house keep the heat in really well. You might be wondering, how come I haven't mentioned windows? Let's talk about them. Windows often happens to be one of the first words out of people's mouths when I come to their house to look for energy leaks. They usually say that it's going to be horrible because all the windows are old, or they say that the windows have been replaced and they're probably in a good shape. In general, it seems that in the mental box titled Home Energy Efficiency, the most common things I find are 3 things: windows, solar panels, and air leaks around doors and windows. It might be surprising, but windows are actually not high on the priority list of things to do to improve energy efficiency, nor are solar panels, nor leaks around windows. And it's not because windows don't lose a lot of heat. Windows do lose a lot of heat. It has more to do with the fact that the energy efficient windows that you might have heard about, they don't exist. New windows are really expensive and they don't have significantly better insulating property than most windows you are replacing, especially if you already have double pane windows and you're going for any other double pane window. The difference in efficiency will probably not be noticeable. Going from single pane window to a double pane window will be noticeable and makes more financial sense. But if money is tight, there are more cost-effective ways to improve it. Plastic film, while not great looking, is probably the most cost-effective to make single pane window perform like a double pane. Storm windows are a more attractive solution. Also, using thermal blinds and drapes, opening them during the day and closing for the night might make a difference. I'm not saying you should not replace windows. If you really want to, you can. Just be realistic in your expectations. I've seen too many people who paid tens of thousands of dollars and did not get the results they hoped for. Window salespeople will not tell you that. They make money by letting people believe what they want to believe. Good reasons to replace windows would be resale value of the house, aesthetics, ease of use, no condensation or mold, and maybe some marginal energy savings. Also, windows are often way overpriced. Around here, for a typical window on a typical single-story house, a fair price is around $50 per square foot. I had a $278 per square foot quoted to me by a salesperson who didn't even mention that I already have perfectly good and efficient windows. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. And you might say, but Jack, I do feel the draft coming from the windows in the winter. I know they leak a lot. We do a test on almost every house where we hook up this machine to the front door and depressurize the house, magnifying any air leaks about 20-fold. So we can just feel them with our bare hands. And in my experience, windows rarely leak any air from outside. What you feel is this really interesting phenomenon. You know how if you stand over a hot surface, you feel air rising. Windows are very poor insulator, so their surface is really cold. If you heat up the air, it floats up. If you cool down the air, it sinks down. What you are feeling is most likely a layer of air by the surface of the glass that cools down, sinks, and creates a whole air vortex in your room, moving air in a circle and cooling it down. That's why spaces with big windows feel drafty and not as comfortable. Okay, enough about windows. If we should take windows out of that mental box of energy efficiency, what should we put in there? The answer is ducts. Yes, those big pipes that carry air from your furnace. If you have them in your attic, crawl space, or garage, they're probably #1 priority to address to make your house energy efficient, comfortable, and healthy. Why is that? Most duct systems were not built airtightly, and they were not properly insulated. What that means is that a typical house easily loses 20% of heating dollars or so, and they're just escaping out of the duct system through the cracks and holes. On this picture, you can see the black lines on insulation over areas where metal seams are. It's a pretty typical view. What it is for decades, the air was being filtered by fiberglass, and the dust deposits made it black. So you can see how much air is escaping. We're looking at thousands of dollars that just escape to heat the street. When air escapes out of the duct system, it also creates pressure imbalances. Your house starts sucking air in areas you don't want it to, and so on. We won't get into it now. But a common bad scenario is if you have a leaky return duct in the attic that is sucking dust from there. If you feel like your house gets dusty faster than it should, that might be the culprit. Duct cleaning. How often should you do it? If your duct system is working right and is properly insulated and is airtight, the answer is never. But if you do have registers on the floor, take them off and first just look there. If you see big gaps between the metal and the wood, it means the ducts are not tight and might be prime candidate to be sealed. Take any debris that might have fallen in and perhaps stick a hose of a vacuum cleaner in there. If I had flexible ducts, I would definitely not use professional duct cleaning. Those rotating brushes can easily damage those ducts. Duct cleaning in general is often a service for companies that they use to get their foot in the door and then upsell you on something. They probably can't make money if they charge less than $200 for that service. So the bottom line is, seal and insulate the ducts really well. We use a special paste that gets smeared on all the joints in a thick layer to seal. When it hardens, it becomes a little bit rubbery and it seals really well. Talking about flexible ducts, they became really popular in the last few decades. They were adopted widely. Now pretty much any new duct system will be made of mostly flexible ducts. Installers love them because you can easily turn, squeeze them anywhere, crush them, and working with them is easy. What's interesting though is that most people who install them apparently did not get the manufacturer's memo that none of those uses are permittable. They are only meant to be installed in the completely straight runs, being tightly stretched. Whenever there is a turn or bend, they need to be made with metal elbows. So if you look into your attic or crawl space and see a little octopus of flexible duct that just sprawl around, that might explain why maybe not all of the rooms are getting warm. Poorly built ducts is unfortunately a very common problem, and the one that is in vast majority of cases will never be fixed. It would be quite expensive to pretty much redo the whole duct system. Okay, let's be done with the energy efficiency. Let's talk about comfort. How do we make our house comfortable? Turns out there's another interesting and little known fact at play. There are 4 factors that determine our thermal comfort. 3 of them we understand pretty well, but actually the most important one we rarely hear about. The 3 are air temperature, relative humidity, and air movement. But the most important one is called median radiant temperature. Don't worry about the name. What it means is the temperature of the surfaces that surround us. It seems confusing at first. How is my arm right now being affected by the temperature of the ceiling? Turns out that they're constantly exchanging heat in the form of infrared radiation. And if ceiling is cold and sending much less heat back to my hand than how much it's sending to the ceiling, my hand is losing heat but not getting it back. Even if the air in the room is comfortable, but the ceiling is cold, if the ceiling, the walls and floor are cold, I will not be comfortable. Many clients have told me after we did the work something like, my house now feels more comfortable at 68 than it did before at 72. And the reason is because once you're surrounded by insulated surfaces that are warmer, you won't be losing so much heat to them. So energy efficiency and comfort are kind of like best friends. They go hand in hand. Quite convenient, really. If you've ever been to a space with radiant heat, you might have noticed how comfortable those spaces feel. Specifically, radiant floors, big warm surfaces feel really good to us. Let's now talk about health. There is emerging data showing us just how much our work can improve people's health. There's one study that found that for people who have anyone with asthma living in the house, every dollar invested into our work returns far more dollars saved on healthcare costs than even on energy savings. The future of our industry might be pivoting on health insurance companies paying for this kind of work, and it would be some of the best investments for them. We've had clients who would go to ER a couple of times a month with asthma attacks, and after our work, they barely use an inhaler. Monetary gains are certainly huge, but of course, that's not even the most important thing here. Health is just really difficult to put a price tag on. Okay, what do we do to improve health of homes? I mentioned a few things already. Sealing air pathways from crawl space and attic improves air quality. Putting ground cover on crawl space floor and not letting any critters in does the same. But let's talk about airflows in the house further. Imagine you close all the windows and doors in your house and stay there for a day, week, month. How soon will you suffocate? I know, it's a funny question. We all know it will never happen. You see, most houses in this country were built with the motto, "A house needs to breathe," which meant that they were built intentionally leaky, allowing air to move through. There was no measuring of how much it is moving. It was just assumed. So where does the air that we breathe come from, and how much of it is going through our house? I was already mentioning the pathways, how the air goes up into the attic and same amount has to come in, mostly from the bottom, the crawl space or rim joist, if you have a basement. But how much of it is moving through? We test most houses we go to for that, and the simple answer is usually too much. Ideal amount for most houses is about 1/3 of the house volume being replaced every hour, or that translates to every 24 hours we want to see the whole volume of the house replaced 8 times. Seems like a lot, but when we test, we find that in older, particularly leaky houses, it might be 3 times as much or even worse. So the whole volume of your house might be replaced every hour. And what's worse, this movement is really driven by temperature difference. So on the coldest day of the year, you have the most air movement, exactly when you want it the least. And if the temperature outside is mild, you might end up with stale air inside. And because of that, we moved away from the mantra, "A house needs to breathe," to the new mantra, "Build it tight, ventilate right." This approach allows us to not waste energy and have just the right amount of fresh air coming in all the time. We also get to have the control of the environment of our houses. What it means is probably exactly what you're thinking. We try to make the house as airtight as we can, primarily concentrating on sealing the top and the bottom. That's where the pressure differences are the biggest, and that's where the air is dirtiest. I'm not all that worried about air leaks around doors and windows, because that's clean air and there isn't much of the pressure difference. Once we seal the house, we provide mechanical ventilation. There are many different ways to mechanically ventilate, but in its simplest form, it's a special bath fan. It's a very quiet and efficient one, and we set it to run 24/7 for as long as the house is going to stand, to a speed that's calculated for each house. However much air is thrown out by that bath fan, same amount of air is coming in. And since we cut off all the dirty sources, hopefully it's now coming from the clean sources. Let me talk a little bit about bath fans. A good, properly installed and vented bath fan with good controls might be some of the best investment in a house that will allow you to prevent a $40,000 remodel down the line. Because bathrooms get humid and wet, and if not properly ventilated, they start rotting. Remodelers love bathrooms because there is never a shortage of bathrooms that rotted through and need to be redone, and they cost a lot to fix. I want to make the case that you want to invest a few $100s into upgrading your bath fan with a fan that's actually working well, and also to make sure that it gets turned on automatically if someone's showering and that it has a timer. Too often we see bath fans that don't move any air, only they make noise. And they get turned on and off with the light. So you turn the light off after your shower and mold starts partying. Dark and humid is the conditions that they really like. How do you know if a fan is good? Fortunately, there is an easy shortcut. Just look at the zone rating. You want a fan that's 0.3 zones. All of those fans will be most quiet. They will also have the motor that's rated for continuous use, and they will ramp up if the venting is not ideal. Talking about venting, any bath fan needs to be vented to the outside. But what's important is that it needs to be vented with a duct that is as short and straight as possible. Air really doesn't like to make turns. Whenever air flows in a sharp turn, it slows it down a lot and makes it turbulent. The same applies to kitchen vents, dryer vents, ducts, or any other pipes that carry fluids. Yes, air is a fluid. Now our house has just the right amount of air movement. The cost of the operation of such a fan is around $1 a month, but it allows to save quite a bit of heat loss and improves air quality. Okay, what other aspects of home health deserve a mention? Probably the most polluting activity in most homes is cooking, especially if you have a gas stove. Making sure you have a well-functioning vent hood above your stove that's vented to the outside can improve the situation quite a bit. But of course, only if you turn it on when cooking. Another cool little tip is to use the back burners instead of the front ones when you cook. It will allow more pollution to be captured and will distance you from its source. It can really make a difference. By far, the most dangerous appliance that I find in people's homes is a gas oven. If you have one of these, they spew a ton of carbon monoxide right into your face. Using a vent hood is critical. I routinely test the level of carbon monoxide in their exhaust that in undiluted concentration could kill a person within hours. When you warm up your oven, ideally open a window and try to get as far away from it as possible. If you want to better protect yourself from carbon monoxide, install a carbon monoxide detector that has a digital display. It will allow you to track the highest level of carbon monoxide ever recorded. Regular carbon monoxide monitors will only sound an alarm if your life is in danger, but they will not save you from moderate exposure. That's just how their standards are written. Any moderate exposure to carbon monoxide can pass for feeling under the weather and is often misdiagnosed. If you feel tired and have headaches every time heating season begins, investigate a CO as a possibility. Other sources of chemicals that we end up breathing in a house include cleaning chemicals and some other stuff that we buy and bring in ourselves. I would say that between water, elbow grease, castile soap, borax, soda, and vinegar, you can clean anything. For example, what everyone uses where I grew up for cleaning windows or mirrors is a wet rag and a newspaper. You just wipe it off with a wet rag and then crumble up a newspaper and rub it vigorously. It will quickly become squeaky clean without any chemicals. Not using harsh chemicals creates multiple benefits. It eliminates the pollution where the chemicals would be manufactured, saves your health and money, and doesn't create pollution where we consume it. Definitely try to stay away from anything that has added smells. What smells are tiny chemicals that go into our lungs, hearts, and brains, and definitely don't make us healthier. A new mantra in our industry is, if it smells, it's probably not good for you. One easy recommendation is to not use anything that says things like kills 99.9% of germs or antibacterial. Those products stimulate the spread of superbacteria that is immune to antibiotics and provide no benefit to the users. We're pretty quickly learning that the mentality of viewing germs as enemies is only hurting us. Our lives actually depend on the microorganisms inside of us. They're our friends, and we might be fortunate to have more of them than the cells of our own body. One more little tip that can save you hundreds of dollars and quite a bit of headaches. Never use detergent pods for your dishwasher nor your washing machine. They're supposed to have their plastic coating dissolve in water, yet it doesn't dissolve. Instead, it turns into goo that clogs the hoses. About half of or more of all the service calls on those appliances in recent years has been due to the use of those pods. Just don't use them. My personal pet peeve is what they call air fresheners. They definitely don't freshen the air. They just put more chemicals into the air that mask other chemicals. Don't believe commercials that try to convince you that adding more chemicals into the air will help you reduce chemicals in the air. It just doesn't work like that. And if that's not convincing enough, consider that if you have kids, they might be ostracized by other kids just for the way they smell of air fresheners if you have them plugged in throughout your house. If you want better air quality in your house, make sure most surfaces are cleanable. Wall-to-wall carpeting, bunch of stuffed animals, or messy surfaces are not cleanable and become giant pools of pollutants. Another interesting tip is just institute a no outdoor shoes inside rule. And so we come to the last big topic I wanted to cover, heating. Remember how we want to make the box airtight, insulated, and then provide efficient heat? Let's talk about efficient heat. There seems to be a great deal of confusion of what's efficient. People are really hung up on efficiencies of different heaters. Some want to find alternative ways to heat their house because they suspect that using regular heaters is not efficient enough, and there must be better ways. Let's start by adapting the right measuring sticks. I say don't worry about percents of efficiency of any particular heater. It's far less important than the real metric, how much money you have to pay to heat your house using it. You would think that they would be correlational, but they don't. They don't correlate. Here's a graph that shows how much it will cost to heat a medium-sized house here in Portland if it had different fuel sources. I made this graph with current prices a few months ago, and they can fluctuate, but general proportions are likely to remain similar to this. Imagine that those green bars are the stashes of money you'd have to pay if you had that fuel. What we see is that efficiency is really not critical here. Electric resistance heat, for example, is super expensive, while it's 100% efficient. The three common efficiencies of gas furnaces, 70, 80, and 96%, are not that far apart and are way cheaper than 100% efficient electric. Oil heat is generally quite expensive, besides having many other disadvantages. Although right now on this graph it doesn't even look that bad because oil prices are actually quite low historically. So if you have gas, great. You certainly can upgrade to more efficient equipment if it's not the most efficient. But the bigger benefits than energy efficiency in that move will come from increased safety. More efficient furnaces happen to be safer because they don't rely on atmospheric draft to take away the smoke and all the byproducts of combustion. Most efficient furnaces take air from outside and exhaust the smoke outside, while the least efficient ones depend on air in the chimney to get hot so that it naturally floats up and pulls everything out. It can be overpowered by exhaust fans and other devices that pull air outside, like a clothes dryer. Those are the kinds of things that we care about and look at. Sometimes it's surprising what components of our house influence each other and how they interact. A house is truly a system and functions best if we approach it as a system. Before we go any further, let me talk about number one thing I want to make sure you know about maintaining a heating system. If you have a furnace, it has an air filter. Replacing this filter and making sure it doesn't get clogged is the simplest and most important maintenance you need to do to your system. It's like changing oil in a car. Replacing the filter that costs a few dollars will ensure that your heater, that costs thousands, is functioning correctly. It's the cheapest and most effective insurance policy you can have. In case you wonder why it's so important, here's why. Furnaces generate a ton of heat. They need to move a lot of air in order to cool off and not overheat. If a filter gets clogged, it does not allow the air to move through, and the furnace starts suffocating and overheating. If you ever notice that your furnace shuts off before reaching the temperature that is set on the thermostat, say it works for 5 to 10 minutes, shuts off, then turns on again and shuts off after some time, and so on, before the thermostat is reaching the desired temperature, it's most likely the sign that the overheating sensor in the furnace gets activated and shuts off the system before it gets damaged. That is most likely happening because it's not getting enough air. We recommend that you check your filter once a month, and if it's dirty, replace it. If you heat your house using electricity, there are two options. More common is what's called electric resistance heat. Any cadet wall heater, electric baseboard, ceiling heat, electric fireplace, space heater, or even an incandescent light bulb, hairdryer, or toaster, all of those are electric resistance heaters. All of them are 100% efficient, regardless of how old they are. Yeah, I know, it's quite amazing, but if you have a 40-year-old space heater, it has same exact efficiency as a brand new thing that you'd buy at a store, and even if it looked like a spaceship. Regardless of what the box says too. If it says things like energy saver, quartz, infrared, made by Amish, none of that matters. I can tell you exactly how much heat it will put out for every watt hour of electricity that it consumes. There is no way to improve that technology. What these heaters are is a very simple device. I almost reinvented it myself when I was a kid once. I once took a piece of insulated aluminum wire and stuck both ends of it into an electrical outlet. It became red hot in a fraction of a second, and then sparks came out of the outlet and electricity turned off in a half of our apartment. Essentially, that was an electric resistance heater. Electric resistance heater is something that lets electricity pass through it and gets hot. Unfortunately, the limitation of this technology is the fact that $1 worth of electricity does not buy you all that much energy. So even though we convert it all into heat, it's not all that much heat per dollar. If you ever use space heaters for heating, you probably know what they do to your energy bills. And if you don't, consider yourself lucky and keep it that way. Why do we see these heaters in so many houses, especially rentals and low-income housing? The sad fact is that these are usually installed by builders or landlords who are not planning on living in those houses themselves. They're quite cheap to install, perhaps the cheapest heaters to install, but really expensive to run. I'm glad that in many places it's becoming illegal to install them in brand new houses. I certainly support that move. So what can we do to efficiently heat using electricity? Fortunately, there is a technology that allows us to do exactly that. It's called heat pumps. Sometimes people talk about heat pumps and describe them as 300% efficient or something like that. I can see how it can be quite confusing since technically nothing can be over 100% efficient. Energy can't be created. And you'd be correct if you thought that. Heat pumps are 300% efficient only if we compare them to electric resistance heat. But they're not generating heat. They do something completely different. What they do is they move heat from outside to the inside, which might feel a little counterintuitive. Let's say it's 40 degrees outside. What they do is they cool down the air outside from 40 to 20 degrees. And then using that heat, they warm up the air inside from 70 to 90 degrees. And that's what comes out of the registers. I won't go into the details how they work, but essentially they do the same thing that your refrigerator or air conditioner does. Your fridge takes heat from your freezer where it's already freezing and dumps it into your kitchen where it's 70 degrees. Heat pumps does the same thing, but it can also reverse the direction. So an added bonus is that all heat pumps have built-in air conditioner. They come in various forms. Most common are ductless mini splits. They also happen to be the most efficient. Another type is a full-size air handler that replaces a furnace and uses ducts. Let me also mention oil heat. Oil is a word we think about when we think about dressing on a salad. In reality, what an oil heat is diesel. Yes, it's the same exact thing that you could buy at a gas station. In fact, sometimes people who run out of oil run to the gas station and just fill up their tank in a pinch. It would certainly work. However, I don't recommend. I certainly hope you would never let your tank run out of oil. We've learned that oil is expensive. It's also probably the one that needs the most attention and adjustment. It really needs to be tuned well to burn cleanly, but even at its best, it's still producing far more pollution than a gas furnace. You might sense that I'm not a big fan of oil heat. I'm not. It was excusable in the 1950s, but there is no good reasons to have it in 2020s. People who can work with these furnaces need to know what they're doing, and they're becoming increasingly scarce. If you have an oil heat, it might be a good idea to be thinking about switching it to something else. Gas conversion would feel probably most natural and easy, but switching to a heat pump can work too. It will just be an adjustment since the temperature of the air coming out of the vents will be quite a bit cooler, and it will feel strange at first. Once in a while, a client tells me that they're thinking of heating the house with a fireplace. That will generally never be as efficient as even a non-efficient furnace. Regular wood fireplaces are completely abysmal in their efficiency. Out of every dollar you spend on wood, some of them would throw the whole dollar up the chimney, and then some, in the form of heated air in your house. There are some more efficient gas models out there, but none of them compare to a furnace. There's generally no need to invent the wheel. The industry is not conspiring against you and not telling you some secret ways of slashing the bills. Sealing your ducts, insulating and sealing your house might be the secrets you're looking for if that's what you're thinking. Sometimes I see that people online claim that they found a way to heat their house with tea light contraption made of flower pots or some stuff like that. They claim it will only cost 4 cents an hour to heat a room. When I do the math, I discover that it's actually 8 cents. And then when I do the math further, I learned that it would mean spending $360 a month to heat a small house. Same house would be heated for $100 using gas. And the whole flower pot contraption, it actually would do nothing. It would work exactly the same if candles were just placed around the house. Of course, I wouldn't even mention the fire hazard, carbon monoxide, and other pollutants, and the fact that someone would have to go around the house and relight 50 candles every 4 hours. Whenever you see stuff online, just do your own math and reasoning. And this brings me to the end of the presentation. But if you're interested in sticking around, let me add a little bonus. It seems that most people have accepted as a fact that the water heater rusts through and starts leaking. Once that happens, there is no way to fix them. They need to be replaced. And so most homeowners who've gone through this before just have this little anxiety in the back of their mind, expecting their water heaters start leaking at any moment if it's older than 10 years. And more advanced homeowners have it drained once a year because there is a belief that removing a sediment from the bottom will extend the life. It turns out that replacing water heater once a decade is not how it's meant to be. They're actually designed to last much, much longer. But for some reason, the manufacturers nor anyone else are eager to share the info with us. I thought that rusting is something that happens when water is touching iron. Now I learned that it's not the case. What causes rust is acidic impurities in water reacting with the iron tank. That's why water heaters in areas with cleaner water and fewer impurities will last longer. And there is more great news. Turns out that those acidic impurities would rather attack soft reactive metals instead of our tank if we give them the choice. And turns out that most tank designs gave them exactly that. Most water heaters contain a stick of aluminum or magnesium that is meant to be sacrificed and replaced every 5 or so years to prevent the tank rusting. Who knew? So if you just replace this stick every 5 or so years, your water heater might outlive you. The stick is called sacrificial anode rod. It cost about $25 at the store. Here is the old one that I took out of my water heater. It took me only about 5 minutes to replace it, but it does require a big wrench with a 1 1/16 hex screw. A little bit of knowledge of what you're doing would be quite helpful too. The old rod might look quite gross, corroded, might be smelly too. It might be one of the best visuals why you should never be using hot water for any cooking. However, it's important that your water heater is not already too far gone. If it's older than 10 years, it might be so rusted that you won't be able to budge it. You might also be concerned if you don't have any space above the water heater to take it out and insert a 3-foot stick. Fortunately, they do have replacement rods that look like sausage links, so you can bend them, stick them in, and straighten them as you insert it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you know anyone who can benefit from our program, please refer them to our website or have them call us. Thank you for watching.